In 15 seconds, can you describe the technical premise behind your latest film, Last Call?
Last Call is a feature film shot in real time, so single take, no edits, but also split screen. So there's two camera crews shooting simultaneously that, when put together in the edit, make up the entire film.
And is this a style you've tried before?
I have done not split screen. I've done a few split screen music videos, but not real time. I have done a single take 20-minute short film, and I worked with Blumhouse, the Horror Kings, to do a sort of War of the Worlds style film that was done live on a cell phone, so streamed live, no edits because it was truly live. There's no way to do it again. That ran about 22 minutes and was a short film that we did right before Halloween a few years ago. And then a bunch of single take music videos, but dealing with 3 to 5 minutes at a time maximum.
What other films have you seen in this style? I mean, have you seen other directors do this?
I mean, the one that everybody knows from back in the day is Rope, Alfred Hitchcock. And although a roll of film can only run for 10 minutes, what they do is they hid the edits perfectly so it feels like a seamless take. Birdman was shot the same way, where they hide the edits, but it keeps that real-time sort of flavor to it. Victoria, that's on Netflix right now, is one of my favorites from a few years ago. That one's massive. It's over 2 hours long. It's very complex, moving all over a German city. Time Code that Mike Figgis made was split 4 ways and done with sort of a loose script and improv, and was just fascinating to watch. Like, experimental films, my favorite. So I've been long obsessed with making one of these myself. It's just been a matter of finding the right story that would work.
What are some of the hidden challenges that the audience doesn't see, but from a technical aspect?
Our film, we chose to strip down the crew as much as humanly possible. So traditionally, you would have a separate person pulling focus for the camera. You would have a camera assistant. For us, we had the camera operator was their own focus puller. We used the new Tilta Max, I forget the Nucleus M, but they're handle grips for a shoulder mount that have the focus wheel in them. So they had to pull their own focus, be their own assistant. There just wasn't room to get in and out of vehicles, move around small apartment spaces up and downstairs, and also trying to minimize the amount of noise of footsteps. And we really wanted to not have to do any ADR for the actors. ADR is when they replace the dialogue, it tends to be always noticeable and never the right emotion. And we have a very emotionally heavy film. In that respect, our sound guys weren't able to use boom mics because, again, there'd be too many shadows on walls or catching it in the frame. The camera's constantly moving, the actors are constantly moving in and out of cars, elevators. It just wouldn't have been practical. So our sound guys were only able to use like lapel mics, lav mics. And what we did was we doubled up the mics. We had 2 mics on each actor. And that way, if one went out, we would hope that the other one was there. If it became untaped and fell down into their pant leg, hopefully we'd have another option. And we actually recorded them both, just one slightly louder, one slightly quieter, just in case somebody screamed, it wouldn't peak. But if they were too quiet, if they were whispering, we would have it on the other mic. So our sound team had the challenge. And then when it comes into post-production, it's the, when you color correct a film or want to reframe anything, usually if you're doing it shot by shot, it's easy to just zoom in for that 10 seconds or color correct shot by shot. But in real time, it meant keyframing, which means, picking multiple points, which by the end of it, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of making minor adjustments. So if the camera turns from a doorway into a darker area and we need to brighten it up a little bit, so that, sort of all those color levels and sound levels are just constantly in flux throughout the whole movie that aren't noticeable to the eye, but definitely play a huge part in making the film look as good as it can.
And you edit all of your own films?
I do, yeah.
So you edited Last Call?
This was my favorite one to edit because I didn't have to edit anything. It really truly was two takes put side by side. So I'm credited as the editor, but it means reframing. So if there's a shot where the character of Scott and Beth are on the phone and he's maybe zoomed, the camera's closer to him, I would reframe and zoom her shot in, but just trying to make moments where the 2 shots could be parallel. We're just trying to find the best beautiful balance between the 2 sides of the story. But also although it's split screen, the split screen changes in the film. So sometimes it's a horizontal split screen, which we did for sort of the emotional core of the story. The idea is that that's when they're not emotionally connected or even actually connected over the telephone. And then the bar will rotate at times and go vertical, so that that's when they are connected. So the perspective of the film also changes throughout. So that involved us in post, adding those rotations in, and then also moving the images at the same time, just to have the best, as it changes from split, to find the best way to present them together.
So how is that on the timeline? Forgive me, so you're dragging in both cameras, and then they're like layered on top, or like how does that?
Just track 1 is Beth's side, track 2 is Scott's side, and then essentially pulling a 50% wipe or transition over top of it, so that we can only see half of the image, and then moving his side to, what we did when we shot it was we drew lines on the monitor, so that our both camera operators could see where perfect center was for when it was a vertical split. So they were actually shooting more on the left and more on the right, so that we had an ability to have some extra room to move, but they also had the lines for the center. So they knew where to put the actors all the time, no matter how they were filming. And if it was from this to this, they knew that they could slightly move and try to just do a very smooth camera move. It was all handheld, and just put them between. If they were in those guidelines, it would work out perfect in the edit.
So no cuts, no dissolves, nothing. Just in the credits at the end.
Yeah, the movie opens from a hard black after a production company logo, and then cuts to a hard black before the credits.
So Gavin, you're directing the movie. There's 2 screens, 2 locations. There's one Gavin. How does that work?
The intention was we would treat it like a play. Where once a play starts, the director sits in the audience. There's nothing else they can do. All of the directing, all of the prep, all of the lighting cue changes, and everything is done in the rehearsal process or between days of performance. So I was going to yell action and wait the 78, 80 minutes, and I would not be able to make any adjustments for the next take until I watched what was shot each day. Due to some sort of unforeseen circumstances, I ended up camera operating one of the sides. So as well as directing, I camera op, our DP Seth Wessel Estes did the one side, I did the other side, and which was helpful, because the take that we used, there are a few minor mistakes. The audience will never know, but it's a moment where the actor could have wanted to cut, and I was at least able to shout from behind the camera, "Don't stop, fix it, keep going." Remove that audio in post, but so I was able to make sort of minor adjustments on my side of the screen, but the other side I was completely blind to. Again, shooting on micro budget, the ideal way would be I'd be sat in a production van somewhere with the world's strongest wireless video feeds coming in, so I could monitor both sides. But just due to the nature of our budget and sort of scrappy approach to making indie film, I just had to sit it out and hope that it went well until I could watch it. So our process was we shot it for 4 nights. So we were going to shoot twice per night for 4 nights and have 8 takes that we would have to pick one of those 8 to be the movie. We ended up with 5 full takes and a few disasters.
Oh, so you are replaying the scene each time? Like you're not doing new takes in the 4 days or whatever? You're doing the movie over again to see which version you like?
No. We would film the entire movie twice per night for 4 nights. So that our intention was to run the entire film. If you think like a stage play, if they had a 7 o'clock performance and a 10 o'clock performance, we would do 2 times per night for 4 nights. Yeah, so 8 runs.
And then choose from the 8 runs the best version, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so your initial plan was to be off, in another location, but then you became one of the camera operators.
I joked that I was just going to go have a whiskey or maybe take a sleeping pill and just wait it out instead of like nervously pacing for the entire time. But yeah, so I was not going to camera op, but it became necessary. And with my background in shooting documentaries and concert footage and being my own cinematographer for many, many music videos and short films, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. I thought I was going to give it one attempt and we'd have to scrape together some more money and fly someone in from Los Angeles. But I did the first run. Everybody I did too good of a job. I should have done a less good job so I didn't have to. So me at the most out of shape I'd ever been, suddenly I had to strap this 50-pound camera on my shoulder and nail perfect focus for 8 takes.
And how far are these locations apart?
We really lucked out. When we were originally discussing the film, we had we were actually going to use a call center. It wasn't going to be a college, and it wasn't going to be a suicide hotline, but it was going to be like a telemarketing center that the character Beth was a janitor at. And that was a good 7 to 8 miles away from where the apartment and the bar location was. But then when the college came on board, St. Clair College in Windsor, the locations are actually only about 2 city blocks from each other. So anytime she's outside of the college, if the camera pointed up, you could see the 17-story apartment building that he's in. Like if he had been on the balcony at the same time she was outside, you may have even seen him in the distance with a trained eye. So that made production a little easier, because at the end of every take or during rehearsal, it was only a block or so to go. We had to drive 8 miles every time we had to do something or deliver a new battery or meet for a lunch break. It would have sort of just extrapolated the amount of time that we needed. We probably would have had to find money and have more days of rehearsal and more time. So we were very, it's just, honestly, this project came together with so little production trouble. Considering the task we were trying to accomplish, everything just started to fall into places like that. So we knew that Windsor was the right choice to film in. We picked the right crew and the right people to make it happen, because even though the process of making the film was not easy, the elements that normally cause production so many problems in terms of finding perfect locations and space and for the right price and all the other aspects of it fell in line fairly easy.
Are you sharing monitor from one location's footage with the other location, or no, because you're doing these long takes?
Yeah.
When you get back, then you reassess it?
Yeah, completely blind. Not until what we would do is we shot all of our rehearsals. So we had 10 days of rehearsal, which was performance rehearsal, actor rehearsal. The first 3 days, 4 days, we were not in the same location. Like what we would do is we would have both Sarah and David, the actors, in the apartment, in Scott's apartment. So she would just sit in another room in the apartment and read lines over the phone. It was just easier to give notes and make changes. And then eventually we got comfortable with splitting into the 2 locations. And once we were there, we would record every rehearsal. And just instead of recording it, we shot the movie at 8K on the red helium, but we decided we shot over the rehearsals at 1080p, because it was just easy at the end of every night to put all of the rehearsal takes into a computer and just roughly frame the split. So everybody watched the rehearsals day in and day out, or I guess every night. And our DP could say, that light's a little too bright, I should change this. Let's try to make the cameras line up here better when we get to this moment when they're talking. And so we sort of use it like the way I would say, like the way a coach would use a game tape from a football game to analyze mistakes or things they can improve or tighten performance, or maybe a band, if they watch back their own concert footage, say, it looks silly when you do that, or that pyrotechnic didn't go off, let's make sure we fix that. Sort of treat it like all I needed was the thing to draw on the screen, to circle players, and it would have been a true game tape.
How are you dealing with lighting, especially if you're moving and if you're having people, physically walking?
One thing, so as well as the camera operators having to be their own focus pullers, they also had an iris control. So if they're moving, say, from the street was a little brighter than the bar, they've got to close the iris, but do it at a speed, a very gentle speed, so that we don't really notice it. Some of that we just tweak in post-production and color to correct. Everything out on the streets is just available light, whatever street light was there. The bar was mostly practical, but augmented with some film light. So we would have to install everything, hide all the cables, because we are filming every location 360 degrees. So there's nowhere to hide a stand or leave a cable visible. The college, the overhead lights are practical, but we did wrap them in a different color gel just to give a bit moodier tone than just sort of the hot white that you get from fluorescence. Everything else in the college is quasar tubes, which has become super popular. Kind of look like LED tubes. You can change the color on them. You see them in movies all the time now because you can set them up as a practical lamp. They look great as like under lights in a kitchen counter or on the wall of an office or anything kind of sci-fi. They're great. So we use those in the computer lab, or we use small quasars to accents. So say like an exit sign in a classroom that she's cleaning, just to give it a bit more red and make it a bit more ominous. And then the apartment that Scott's in, it's mostly practical. It's changing a 60-watt bulb to a 100-watt bulb, like putting a light in the fridge if he's going to open it that's a little different, a light over the stove. There were a few lights out on the balcony when he's out there that are hidden, that are film lights, but the majority of that set was just done all practical.
So there may be a filmmaker watching right now who's inspired by the film or the idea. What advice would you give them? What are some of the biggest pitfalls to making a film in this style?
Ample rehearsal time. If you're going to make something in real time, it really all comes down to the planning. I mean, all film is pre-production to make it go well. I just think you have to allot more time before you roll camera in order to make sure that every little detail is right. It's like learning dance choreography for the camera operators and the technical crew. And the actors, to a sense. There's just so much to remember where you can't say, oh, I messed that up, let's just go back to ones and start again. The more times you do that, if you're 40 minutes into a 70-minute take and you have to start over, it costs a lot of money and a lot of time to continue to do that. So you really want to put as much prep into it as humanly possible. I think the other thing to consider too is even in like a 4-minute single take music video, we've had moments where like, it's kind of boring for 20 seconds. You have to find a way that if you're going to do a film with no edits, how do you keep it interesting? Like, what's the story? It can't just be a gimmick. It can't just be, we did it in a single take. Because the first question is, why? You have to justify why you're using that format. And that goes the same for any style of filmmaking. Why are you using handheld? Why are you doing everything on a Steadicam? Like, you have to know why you're doing things, what the camera motivation is, what story do you possibly have to tell that doesn't require cuts or keeps that immediacy and that sort of, that was our goal, to make a film that would always feel immediate, always feel tension. If that phone call ends, this man's life might end. So putting that tension, we thought the easiest, because every time you cut or have a fade in and a fade out to later, you get a tension relief. So you probably want to be telling a story that undeniably cannot break the tension in order to tell something in real time. And then study the masters. Go watch Timecode. Go watch Victoria. Make sure you really consider. Even our cinematographer Seth. He's an established cinematographer. The first thing he did was reach out to the DP of Victoria and just said, "How did you do this? How did you do that?" And he wrote back. He was very kind. He said, "I don't have time to answer every individual question. I get asked this a lot, but I've put together this FAQ that sort of like runs the gamut of questions you could probably ask. If there's anything after that, please reach out." So yeah, ask people who have been there before, because most people are excited to share their knowledge in this industry, especially if it's something that's in a rare format or rare style. I can say positively the people that gave me help and advice on how to do it, I'd be more than happy to pass that on. So that's it. Do your research, figure out why you want to tell the story that way. Don't make it just a gimmick. Have something real to say.
Was it the last version of shooting, like the last day, that ended up making it in the film, or no?
It was day 3 of 4, the first take. So we shot this first take that night, and everybody felt amazing about it. We knew there were 2 little mistakes in it, but we knew that we could work the mistakes into the story. We found it was basically 2 times that Scott tries to use the phone to call, but actually misdialed and got a wrong number. So he just had to hang up the phone. We're like, well, we'll add in you've reached so-and-so mechanics. We're not open until the morning. And so we can fix that if everything else, but everybody felt so positive about it. We said, instead of exhausting ourselves going again tonight, let's stop. Let's all go home. We're exhausted at this point through rehearsal, and said the camera guys get a break. Everyone gets a break. Let's just come back tomorrow and try to go for broke and do one bigger and better, knowing that we can live with this being the take. So the next day, on the 4th day, we did our last take, which was our 5th take overall. We got one and it was really good, but ultimately we did come back to the one that we all knew in our guts would be the take.
And that was the very first one?
It was the first take of day 3.
Oh,
so it was
okay.
Take 4 of 5. Yeah.
Wow. What was the emotion like when, even though you did one last take, you went home, rested, but knowing that this one looked really good, even though there were two little minor things? How was that?
Pure relief. You know, we were on our second last day where it's like the money runs out tomorrow. We can't come back. We lose some of our crew. Flights are booked for people to fly back to Los Angeles. Like, it's do or die. And there definitely was a sense of, I don't know if we're going to get this. We always knew that going in, that, you know, it's experimental. This might not work out. We had to tell our investors, you know, this might not happen, you know, so that's part of what you have to understand in investing in an experimental film. We might have to do some cuts in there to mix tapes together and just, you know, not make a real-time movie anymore. But when we got it, it was interesting because sometimes it came down to like the technical would be perfect, but one of the two actors would be like, it wasn't. I just know it wasn't my best take, but the other actor would have had an amazing take. But then you have this unbalance of characters that wouldn't work, and just something with that take when we were finished, everybody knew it was great. So it was a lot of celebrating, but also nervousness because like, okay, well, we got to come back tomorrow and try to like. We know there's things that don't work here. It's got to be perfect, but it's relief. And I felt that many times doing single take music videos. Generally on indie music videos or any music videos now, you get one day. So if you're doing single take, you don't often have a day of rehearsal even budget-wise. You show up that day, you've got 12 hours to build it, prep it, design it, shoot it, and have it done. So you usually get to around hour 10, hour 11 being like, why do I keep doing these single take things? Like, just it'd be so much easier if we cut. So I think like anything, when it comes down to like, it's like the winning point. I'm terrible at sports analogies, but it's like, if you've only got so much time on the shot clock to get that final, you know, that final goal or that final couple points to win the game, it really comes down to that pressure. Like if you're that kicker in the Super Bowl that's going to make or break the Super Bowl rings, the minute you kick that goal through, it's nothing but relief.
So then you really didn't have a rough cut once you finished sort of piecing together different parts. It was basically just a few things and it was done.
Yeah, it was, I mean, the reframing took a while, the color grading took a while, but yeah, to put a rough cut together was like same day, essentially, like temp some music in. And again, our audio tracks, it's just two audio tracks from each microphone. So 4 audio tracks, but it's all one long continuous real time. So to sync those up was nothing. So there was immediately a rough cut. We got accepted to our first film festival off of a rough cut before our composer had done the music. Because he, you know, although he scored the movie live, like recorded it live, he took the time to write it, and we talked about where the music would go and get all the sheet music prep for the musicians and whatnot. But yeah, it was very interesting to like walk away from a movie and not then have that like the next few months of my life are sitting in this dark room, staring endlessly at these 4-second to 30-second clips trying to put a movie together.